So today I want us to have this powerful conversation. The reason as why I call it powerful is because so many of us go through this dilemma, and some of us just don't know how to get out of it, and we don't know how much it's affecting us, and we don't know how much it's affecting our results. Remember, in this community, what we decided to do is to choose to thrive regardless and against all odds. That if the options are sinking, surviving, and thriving, we are going to choose to thrive with all our minds and everything that is within us. But that demands that we make certain shifts in our lives. And one of the shifts that we must vividly make is killing or stopping or halting comparison, because it's the thief of joy, it's the worst thief of your self-esteem, of your identity, of your confidence. It kills and kills and kills. And if the Bible says that the enemy does not come but to kill and to destroy, you realize that comparison is one of those things and key weapons that the enemy uses in order to kill us, to kill the results, the productivity, the performance, and anything else that we would have gotten as a result, big success and significance, because then we stay in a limbo or we run a rat race of comparison that never heads anywhere. So this is what we're talking about today, and I hope that you can be able to invite your friends to watch with us. And if you think that this is a conversation that can benefit someone, please invite them. Let them come to this community, join us, let's learn together, and let's grow together, okay? And then so many of you have sent questions to deal with comparison, and you don't state it categorically clear that this is comparison, but you can clearly see there is envy that is boiling underneath, that there is someone looking at others and thinking that they have made it in life and they have not made it. And so many times when we see people that are succeeding, we feel like the comparison, the comparison game is so bad that even when you are succeeding or you have some wins and milestones, things to celebrate, when you see someone else that is succeeding in another field, there is a way you place them on a pedestal, you place them higher than yourself, and then you tend to lessen or put yourself down, even when the whole world is looking at you and they feel like you're an achiever, you're being successful, you're nailing it, you're working it out. But inside of you, there is an inner child, the envious you, the one that, that covets other people's, wins and successes and doesn't wish them for others sometimes. And sometimes you wish them for others, but again, you feel less because they are winning. So that is the kind of feeling that I want us to be able to dive into today, and just to know how it affects us, just to know how to get out of it, and just to know where it originates from. Because if we can know its origin, then we can be able to help ourselves out of this rat race and out of this comparison, and we can stop the killing of our dreams, the killing of our confidence, and the killing of our self-esteem and confidence, okay? So while I was thinking about this, I actually went back into my own life and realized that there are few things that the time that I decided to deal with my own kind of comparison, we all compare at one point or another. But for me, when I decided to go back to where was this coming from, because at certain point on my life, I saw everyone and everyone was prospering. And even scripture would not help, because even when I knew that there was somewhere in the Bible where David said that that I looked at all the heathens prospering, and he felt bad about it, but he says, until I went to the house of God and knew their ending. But the until comes afterwards. The first and foremost depiction that we see in this state is he looked at everyone, and everyone seems to be fruitful, everyone seemed to be prospering. And I know that I have ever been in that valley in my life where I looked at everything else as glamorous. Whatever everyone was doing was good, and I was the one one that was lost. I was the one that didn't know what I was doing. I was the one that was unsure. I was the one that, even when people felt like, yeah, she's growing, she's trying her level best, I didn't see any of that. And I remembered some of the words that have been spoken into my life while I was growing, and I was trying to see where is the foundation of this. Because I grew up, I remember my mother telling me that right from when I was a child, I used to have quite a big body. And at some point they called me Mudigido, and Mudigido came off as, you know, as a joke for so many people. At some point they called me Bugumu, because whenever I stayed in confined places, I was just fat, you know, as a child. And so that caused a lot of issues, because even when I was in primary, I remember people used to say, oh, she looks quite older than her age, you know. And I remember telling you and sharing with you at some point some of my uncles that mentioned, she's even older, I think she can get married. Why waste school fees when her siblings can use that school fees? You know, she looks like a woman already. She can get married. So I realized that so many things that were spoken into my life that shattered my self-esteem when I was young. And as I grew up, I staggered a lot. I remember, this is a conversation I've had with Tim so many times, when I look at Ariella, my daughter, and how she works and does her things, and she's exactly like a mini me of some sorts. Not me making her, but she just seems to have her own trajectory of her thoughts and lines and things that she wants to do. And she seems so confident. She seems like she asserts herself and she knows what she wants and stuff like that. So Tim looked at her and said that was supposed to be you, but you grew up in a generation and maybe in an environment that did not nurture that. So I grew up in an environment that shattered the self-esteem, that shattered the confidence, that shattered, and not because my parents did that, no, but in the environment where I grew up from and the people that were around me, and the kind of reactions I would get from them, and the kind of not even compliments, the kind of what would I call them, words that they will speak over me as I actually grew, as I grew. So many of us don't know that these words actually affect us. So when we get up here, when someone tells you, you will never amount to anything, or at one point I stayed at my uncle's place, and you know, I was the one that was usually left out. I was the one that, you know, that was usually, as in so many things were happening, and so many words were coming in, you know, taking my clothes, and you know, not having enough food, all those things. So I just figured that, you know what, I must be able to I must decrease in order for me to survive. So I stayed in a survival mode for a very long time, that it was so hard for me to regain my self-esteem and my confidence later on in life. But again, when I dug deep and found out that these words that were spoken over me for so long had actually dented me, and I saw other people as better than me, and I looked at others when they were being successful, and I envied them, and I didn't know that that could happen for me. I thought that it was not about hard work and working smart and commitment and consistency, all these things that I talk about right now. I didn't know that anyone would pull them out of that pit and make it in life. I just looked at everyone as if they had it ready to go and they were okay, and I was the one that was struggling, and I was the one that was not making it in life. So you realize that when I dug that foundation and knew, I started looking at myself differently. I started to rewire how I look at myself. And when I got to have this strong personal relationship with God, and started to see myself as who God sees me, and I knew who I belonged to, and I knew what I can do, because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So I started to rewire my mind, and I stopped the comparison game, because then I knew that He has called me to do exploits. I knew that He had called me to do bigger things, that He has my name written in the palms of His hands, that He had thought about me, and He thought about me before my parts were woven together in the sacred places, that He blessed me, He predestined a good future before I even existed, that before the foundations of the earth. So do you see how I begin to rewire my own understanding of myself according to who God sees me as, and what He has prepared me, and what He has predestined predestined for me. So for me, that was at the beginning of actually the, you know, when we talk about the growth spurs in children, there is those moments where a child grows very fast. For example, my son, Asahel, right now, he's in the phase where he has just started walking, but he walked on Ariella's birthday. Those were the first steps, even captured on camera. We just thought, we're taking a video, and all of a sudden the guy takes like 5 steps, and all of a sudden the next day he takes like 20 steps. The other day he takes like, he rotates around the compound. I'm like, but all of a sudden, like, it's a growth spout. So you realize that when you get to the foundation, the true foundation, not the false foundation, that is where I want you to be able to deal with the false foundations. What do you think has brought this about in your life? Number 2 of the things that I really dug out was where I attach my identity and the things that I attach my identity. That you can easily attach your identity to something. It could be a job, it could be an achievement, a certain achievement, it could be a house, could be, you know, for those of us that are speakers, you could attach your identity to actually your career or your calling or your, and you feel like, okay, if this has not happened, then it has not happened, it's not going well with me. For example, I talked to a lady recently, and this lady is a social media influencer, and that's part of what I teach and train in the Mentorship Academy, in the Coaching and Speaking and Business Accelerator. So this lady told me that, you know what, I mean, I was the kind who was called on, you know, to influence these different things, you know, to influence for businesses. And so all of a sudden, after some time, I realized that so many people had come into this industry, and now I was being left out. And so this lady started to think, am I just old, or am I analog? Is it that I don't do this job properly because I feel like others are being invited, but I am not being invited, I'm being left alone? So this lady, literally, like, she was really concerned. And I realized that this was the root cause of this was coming from a comparison angle, not even from, because for some people I usually tell them that you can use comparison, actually you can use it for inspiration. That if you can manage to catch yourself in the moment and say, you know what, instead of comparing, I am going to pick insights, I'm going to pick inspiration. So that means you are diverting it in your mind and changing it in your mind and saying, you know what, instead of me hating on this one or being envious about this one, I am going to pick a few things, let them inspire me into being better or into being, you know. So if you think they are young and vibrant, you think they just don't care, you think they have no worries in the world, I'm not saying that go and copy those things, but I'm saying how can you be able to work a better angle, a different angle, and be able to, you know, to go on with your life. So you realize for this lady was, she attached her identity, and I told her, you attached your identity to being called to influence for businesses, and when the influencing gigs came down, you thought that now you are being useless, and now you started comparing yourself to those that are just coming up, and you started, you know, one attached their identity to a job, and so when they asked for a promotion, they realized that their request was turned down, but again, someone even more junior to them was promoted. So they just said, you know what, I think I am just useless in this company, I don't think I will amount to anything, I don't. And why were they saying that? Because they were comparing themselves to this other person. So they attached their identity, they attach their importance to them being promoted. And sometimes we attach our identity to things that are, and sometimes we attach our identity to things that should be or things that we hope for. And when those things don't happen, then we are shattered, we are beaten down, and we are being killed, because comparison is a killer of self-confidence, of self-esteem. But again, it's a dream killer, and it kills the relationships around you, and it kills your mood, and it kills everything that is happening around you. So you realize that when you look at the Bible, for those of you that are Bible readers, when you look at Saul and you look at Jonathan, those two are totally different. Jonathan was anchored in the fact that, you know what, my identity is attached to a God that never fails, that I can fight in his name, I can pursue in his name, and I am rest assured of a win because I believe in this God. While Saul was busy and bent on pursuing and killing and because he saw David come up, okay? And David was thriving. David was in his season. David was making it. He was killing it. And so he felt envious of him, that to the extent that he wanted to kill him, and he pursued him in so as to be able to kill him. So you realize that there are two different people with two different outlooks on life, and one is comparing themselves, and one is rooted in the identity of God and knowing that God is the Almighty and I can do everything for as long as God is on my side. So where do you attach your identity? If you attach your identity to your beauty, that means if your beauty, for example, there are people who just get a simple rash on the face and all of a sudden they can't go to the public, they can't do anything, their life is stuck, and you get an accident or something happens to you, as in anything can happen. In this world, we are living in a world that is unpredictable. But again, I can tell you for a fact that comparison has become an epidemic. It's on a rampant growth, and it's on an increase. It's like a COVID that is eating at us. But again, we cannot tell because it's not viral. It's not, we feel like it cannot be transmitted from one person to another. But yes, it can. Comparison can be contagious. If you stay long enough with one who beats other people down all the time, before you know it, you start doing it. Because then you start looking for all the bad things in other people, why they're doing this, or they seem to be wiseacring, they seem to be the one putting themselves down, they seem to be the ones to, why? Because they are doing something that you either can't do or you've just not started doing, okay? Because some of us have not even known our capabilities, that we are capable of so many things more than what we are currently doing. But because another person is in a season where they have discovered themselves and they're doing it, does not mean that you're not going to do it. You can actually do it even better than them, but because they have started on their journey, instead of celebrating them, you are busy tearing them down. That is a recipe for disaster. But just like I told you that it's an epidemic, it's continuing to rise, and it's eating at us, and it does not segregate, because some of you will say, but it's only women who compare themselves to others. No. Even men compare themselves to others. And men's ego actually gets more in their way, because they will look at you and then they will gauge you, and then they will start comparing themselves. They will feel less than, but they will not say it. Now, for us women, we speak about everything. So we'll utter it out. We'll tell whoever cares to listen to us, and we will, and you can clearly, and so many times I look at someone and they're, verbalizing all these things, and I can literally see they're struggling with something. I can literally see they're comparing themselves. I can clearly see that their self-esteem has been dented. I can clearly see that, they feel like they will never amount to anything. Like, that is it. They've been cast in a pending box somewhere, not knowing that they're the ones that are casting themselves there. So I want you to look at those, but again, I want you to know that comparison is in our human nature, okay? In our human nature, because we grew up in different societies, but in those societies, you realize that it's very natural for us to be able to categorize ourselves in statuses. And so when you look around and you're like, the other one is better than me, the other one, no, I am better than the other one. So you realize that the comparison game is actually wired deeply in our mindsets as humans, in order to see who we are better than and who is better than us, and all that. And it was one way of classifying statuses and what is happening in society. So it is a normal thing that even when someone goes to a party, they will be like, she's dressed better than me, or I am dressed better than that one. And that is why I usually say that we are natural, like self-appointed judges half the time, because we are always judging and comparing and looking, and ogling and staring, all those things are supposed to be, looking. But it is hardwired in our human nature. But again, if you feel that is putting you down, that is decreasing your productivity, that is decreasing your results, that is not creating ambition, it is killing ambition, those three things. If you feel like looking at others, and even if it's comparing your statuses and where you belong and this is also hardwired you know, looking at someone and the kind of job that they do, the kind of car they drive, the kind of house they live in, the kind of spouse they're married to, the kind of children that they have. Like, we are literally looking at everything, even the bodies people have, even the color of their skin, even their, as in, we are looking, their hair, oh my God, their nails. Like, we are always looking at something. And comparison is not something that makes you feel better than because you're looking and because, no, that means you are actually looking and saying, it's not that good. It's not as good as, you know, they show. When you see a happy couple, they're not as happy as they show. So you realize that there is an undertone of jealous, of envy. There is an undertone. Why? Because you're comparing yourself and you're thinking they're better than you, and yet that does not make you feel any good. And I remember there's a time, I think I mentioned, if something does not make me feel good, if it's not in legitimate ways putting money in my pocket, I am so not giving it my time, because the time I have left is literally cartoon. Okay, I have very little time, and I have so many things and coats to fill. So I might as well dedicate that time to grooming my children, to giving time to my spouse, to, you know, to minding my business. Okay, literally minding my business. Kufa kumudala gwange. As in, the time that I have should be used appropriately. I should be able to optimize it. I don't think I will be optimizing it by looking at other people and then feeling less of myself, and then I'm self-loathing, and then I'm self-blaming, and then, because from comparison, there is nothing like I am comparing myself so that I can do better. No. Comparison, you are comparing yourself so that you will feel bad. You're comparing yourself and then you end up feeling less. You compare yourself and then you end up feeling bad. And I think you've seen this at workplaces, in churches, you know, different places. You literally see that you are struggling. And if you're struggling with this, better admit that you're actually struggling with this, so that you can be able to find the so much needed help to be able to do some of the things that you really have to do. And then for some of us, we are naturally insecure. So if you're naturally insecure, you will always look out, and even if something is below you or something is on the same level, you will always look at it as better than, because you are naturally insecure. An insecure person does not trust themselves, is not so sure about themselves. They're always second guessing themselves, and they're always, you know, self-loathe. They beat themselves down. So if you are the conversations that you have with yourself, there's always someone that is better than you. So even when you have a spouse, you always think that spouse will leave you for someone who is better, for someone who is richer, for someone who is, you know, taller, for someone who is, as an insecure person, you're always thinking about all the wrongs that could go wrong. So you realize that an insecure person is prone to comparison, okay? That they're going to compare themselves in terms of being beautiful, in terms of what they're dressing, in terms of the car they're driving, in terms of, you know, so, and they will start, I remember there is one who commented and said that, but those car, the car that they drive, don't you think they are linked to government somewhere and they embezzle funds? And I was like, hey, so whoever drives a good car is actually embezzling and is in corruption. As in, for you, you can never think, you can never sit down and think that people can buy themselves good cars. And I was like, whoa, okay, people have a long way to go. And after I really took that dive, now I look at people and I'm like, oh my God, I just hope that they can be able to re-engage their mind, rewire their mind, and be able to concentrate on their own growth and wishing other people good, because that is the growth that is sweet and nice. Instead of thinking that, you know what, whoever got a job then had to sleep with someone. I think you have seen some of those things. Or whoever got a position somewhere, maybe given something small. Whoever, as in, we think less of other people, not because they are less, but because we think they have something that we don't have, and now we want to play an equalizer game. But that is not an equalizing game. That is you going below the belt. Okay, that is you being the one that is torturing yourself, because then you have more time to concentrate on this. Because this person that actually made a mention of the car, the car that I drive. I was like, okay, so they sat there and they kept thinking that, okay, she drives this kind of car, so she works in government, but she's linked to government somewhere, and so she can't have that money to actually buy that kind of car. And yeah. So that person, that means you take too much time instead of being productive. Just like I said, that comparison kills productivity and results. For you, you are looking for whoever that you need to pull down in order for you to feel. And it's an ego. It's an ego actually self-protecting or preserving itself, that you know what, you are better than anyone. They got it not because of merit, they got it because of something else that they did that is dubious, so that you can feel good. And let me tell you, that feel good does not last, because then tomorrow you have to look for another person to pull down in order to feel good. And the other day you have to pull another person down in order to feel good. Or in another day you have to look at another person, place them somewhere on a pedestal, feel bad about yourself, and then you wallow in your self-pity. And then, you know, it brings, it's a root for disaster. It's a recipe for disaster. It never amounts to anything. So I hope that the sooner we can be able to open our eyes. I'm sharing this because I've taken a deep dive into this and seen that it's not healthy for human beings. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for me. But again, there is hope that we can actually come out of it. And as you get yourself a water or get yourself a coffee, I want us to come back and be able to talk about how do we salve ourselves or salvage this situation in case we find ourselves in the deep end of comparison. How do we start to back up and be able to come out and be able to fully mind our businesses, increase our productivity, our ambition, and our results? I believe that that's the trajectory we want to take. We do not want to take the trajectory that is going to be bitter and beaten and dead for the rest of our lives. I don't think we want that. So come back, let's finish up.